Happy afternoon. So my session and lunch is what is going to be there. I will be the person who will be there before the lunch. So what we will do is I have one presentation, mainly an extract of the guidelines, and I'll try to cover it off maybe within less than an hour's time, and I'll run you through a PDF document which is part of the peer review manual, which gives you the guidance what exactly needs to be filled, how it has to be done, not like saying yes and no, or even if some cases where it's not acceptable. So we'll go in that flow, and of course as and when you have any clarification doubts, you can always look for that. So like it's in a simple way. If I tell form one, it's the first form. Second, any work as a chartered accountant has to be done. What is your source document? Client data, client information, client explanation, client meeting, or whatever you call it. That's how the form one is. Because this is the first, probably I'll not say first step, because the first step is communicating to the peer review board and asking for a peer review, or then they only communicate. The next, more time, I would not say time consumption, more time where it needs to be invested is the preparation of form one. Because this is one document which will give you the entire information about the firm, their policies, what they do, how they handle the work, what is their human resources, what is their quality control. Everything is covered in this. Of course, when we cover AQMM, that goes into more of your implementation also. And this would be the first document a peer reviewer would go through it, make his notes. Second, which is annexure A, which forms part of, that's one of the critical aspects, I'll cover that also, which will give the number of attestations what we would have done, mainly the audit, bank audit, India's audit, or whatever the audits you would have done, that will get covered there. Based on which will be the source for the peer reviewer to plan his review, the number of days, plus what samples he wants to select. So important here is be transparent, give the information correctly. If something is not there, clearly mention this is what there, or you're in the process. Need not mention you're in the process. If yes, it's there or not there, wherever need, give the explanation. So what's the objective of this session? As I told, this is a source document for you. Have a smooth peer review exercise. Second, you'll also know when you read the guidelines all that what is exactly a reviewer expects from the peer review. That's also very clearly given in the guidelines. Then, of course, when your form 1 is properly filled, giving the adequate data, your review process will be faster and the delays will be avoided, because some of the experience what we have seen is they have to keep the data, they have to prepare data. That's where a lot of time gets wasted. That can be avoided, because at the end of the day you are not doing the current data. You are going to prepare a data for the previous, or you need to have the data for the previous period. So that's where is the challenge. To avoid the delays, have your form properly fit with the data what is required. Then of course, whatever is a common errors, you can always, even when you look at the guidelines, it gives you what's a normal common errors. You also covered on that aspect what normally the common errors peer reviews go through it. Probably I'll just read out. This is again first step, as we say, it is more of the form 1. So once you submit the form 1, once you communicate to the peer review board that you want to have a voluntary peer review done, or it's mandated there, then you need to submit the form 1. Then the list of assurance clients, that's as a part of annexure A, that's again part of the form A that needs to be submitted. Then as it was covered in the first session, 3 of the selections will be given. Again, if you look at the form 1, you can always opt for a local chartered accountant to do the peer review, so that to some extent the cost, all that will benefit them, and it's always easy to coordinate. They can visit your office and the process will be faster. Sometimes they do allocate outstation chartered accountant. You can always request to have a local chartered accountant do it. Then a peer reviewer is supposed to submit a form 2, because that's more of a confidential data, as there are restrictions. He has to very clearly give a clear declaration saying that this data would be only used for peer review, not used for any purpose. They will not approach the client or any of the members of the PU. those confidentiality will be signed by the main peer reviewer, and the institute allows them to take one more chartered accountant help also to do the peer review process, just only to ensure that the process is faster. Again, their scenario also, the form 2 has to be submitted by the accountant, but the main peer reviewer has to give the form 2 before he gets access to the form 1. So once the form 2 is submitted to the PU, then only the form 1 needs to be shared by the PU, till that time not required. Then form 1, then the samples all, this is a process. Just a snippet how the normal sample selection happens, as Sina was covering. It depends on the partners, locations, what type of attestation you have done, methodology, fees charged. Again, I'll cover what case it's a fees charge is there. Then the quality standard controls what needs to be followed, listed entity, number of partners, methodology for whatever the audits or the attestation you, what methodology is there. It could be like, if I give an example, statutory audit of listed entity, public entity, private sectors, it could be non-corporate entities. What is your tax audit methodology? What is your certification method? All gets covered in a holistic approach. Then of course UDIN is again the source document wherever the attestation is done. So as I was telling, Form 1 is a foundation document for ensuring that you have a smooth peer review and process gets quite faster. So it's a reviewer appointment for the geographical and expertise matching, so which all your head office branches will get covered. Sample selection is based on your form 1, then the AQMM applicability, which was covered also. Again, most important thing is the moment you say a particular point is applicable in the form 1, expect that supporting documents has to be there. So if you say that, if I give a simple example, you say that you have a quality manual or you have a partner review process or there is a trail of the review process. If you say yes, it has to be substantiated with the process. The better way is to step 1, keep the details in form 1, how is your review process being done, what level articles do, what level your senior review, what level partners get involved, define it in the form 1, so that will help the reviewer to get a proper understanding of your quality control. Second, wherever he needs some documentation, as in the samples he verifies, he would ask all these details. So how do I know that the points has been discussed with the client management, what level it has been discussed, how you are confirming, all that we need to demonstrate. That's a whole aspect of the form 1 details. So the initial slides are more basics. I'll try to cover it faster. First one is your basic about the name, FRN and review period. Simple ICA records is your source document for this. Whatever you have your SSP, the firm SSP document, download it. Anyway, that copy has to be given to the PU. Take that as your basis, your name of the firm, your FRN, and the review period will be mentioned in the peer review communication. So whatever the mail you would have got from the peer review board, it will mention what is the period. Ensure those are there. See why it looks very basic, because some errors we do find it. Because the moment you find some errors, there is a process again, they have to go for a revision of form 1, process gets delayed. So be cautious, it's a little effort that is needed. Ensure these basic documents are taken care of. So what is not should be is no trade name or registered name. If you have some trade name, don't you, because whatever is there as per ICA records, just stick to that. That is how you can ensure the accuracy of this basic data. Then FRN digits, like for example, instead of 0, you put O, capital O. Looks same, but it's a basic error. Then wrong period I've talked about, and mismatch with the PRB, because the communication, the moment you get it, it's an email communication. So that date, whatever you would have received, that also has to get captured in form 1. Ensure those are taken care. Next is, what is the mandatory for peer review? One, of course, now it's going to become mandatory from the next year onwards. Some cases, institute also comes up with saying that you need to go through a peer review for whatever the circumstances it could be. Some special cases, like some QRB or anything has happened, they might insist that even though you have covered already a peer review, they might insist that you need to go through one more peer review to ensure that the quality is taken care in the interest of everybody. Then new unit, which is going to get covered anyway now going forward. Then sometimes decision of the peer review board also they might insist for. Here what is important is tick the right which is applicable. No ambiguity, no multiple selections on it. What is applicable to you? Either if it's a voluntarily you've gone for it or it's a mandatory, just mention, or if it's a new unit, if a new firm has got incorporated, just mention it's a new unit review. Then the next aspect is what is important is what is that reports you have signed. Again, source is your UDIN to ensure that the completeness of the data what you share, what you put in the annexure A, your source will be UDIN. That's how you can ensure that. So what to be included? All your assurance services, statutory, tax audit, certification or any type of attestation which you would have done with an UDIN and you would have signed as a certificate or any of the attestation functions gets covered here. Then again I told part A, that's a class 22 which has got the details of what you need to keep because that is a critical aspect of your entire form A. As I was telling on the assurance service what is given plus the which will be the source for the sample selection. What need not be included? Your consultancy services because there is no signature in that. For example, if I give an example, you might have given a CFO service. It's only of a more of an advisory service you would have given. You would not be signing anything or anything, not expressing your opinion. It's only based on what is the requirement. You would have been guiding them. Income tax returns filing. Again, there also you are only going to do a review of the return and recommend the client whether it's proper and the filing will be done. And any non-assurance advisory work. Any of the advisory work which doesn't involve any signing or attesting, it is excluded. Again, key thing is just ensure that you map with the UDIN. The easier way is whatever the annexure A you have, put your UDIN next to that. So that's how you can know that you have your reconciliation is already done. Then plus whatever the certification, tax audit, all that you have done, you can have the UDIN details captured. There is a reconciliation what even he also covered up. Listed entity, no choice. It will be mandatorily picked even if it is a case of a non-operational listed entity or who is in the process of getting delisted, whatever would be the scenario, listed entity will be mandatorily picked because that is a risk, high risk area and that has got its own set of documentation that needs right from the independence, acceptance, work, limited review, everything gets covered. So that would be automatically get covered. Again, most important is when you are giving the data in Form 1 and Annexure A, be very specific, listed entity, yes, no, be very specific on that. Again, this gets triggered your AQMM because AQMM for listed entity, it's mandatory, there is no choice. So the moment you say listed entity, all, I would say the process gets automatically becomes applicable. Listed entity, it's in again a SEBI defined. What is listed entity? Again, I talked about you have an option in Form A1 where you can easily you can say that you want to opt for a local peer review. You can clearly mention that you want a local reviewer to come and do the peer review. And other important aspect is, which most of you take care, just ensure that there is a SPOC for the peer review whose email ID, contact details and the whatever the any communication needs to be shared, and it has to be a partner, one of the partners. It can't be either a member of the firm, it has to be one of the partners who's there, who's in charge for it. He has to respond because here what happens, even the response time to the peer review mails also is very important. For some reason the response doesn't come, then it gets delayed. There is a probability sometimes if you don't respond to the three options they have given, they will say that you are not interested to select any of them. They will again start the reprocess. Again they'll say we'll give another three options, then you know, because there it's a very clear mandate, max of a day or two is when you have to respond. And unless and until for some reason the peer reviewer doesn't respond, then it's a different thing. But the response from the PO has to be on time. That's been the case. You have to ensure that your contact details are properly updated. Use official ID, that's always easy. Whichever email ID you are looking at in day in and day out. Simple address for communication, ensure it's updated because your peer review certificate comes to that address. Again, the new units is where you'll have certain things, most of the things will not be applicable if it's a new unit which is not incorporated. There is a specific guidelines, there is a 2-pager guidelines in the peer review manual for the new units what needs to be done, because most of the things will not be applicable. But what is more important is you have to specify not applicable. Don't leave anything blank. There is no assumptions involved here. The only why it has been stressed upon so much is you leave it anything blank. What happens when the reviewer comes, then he will make you to revise the details again. Plus, there can be sometimes multiple revision based on the review order. Those can be avoided. And as I was telling, it will give you the holistic view of the entire for operations of the firm. So make it as elaborate as possible. Then key verifications, you would mainly look at ICA records on the basic data, all that. You need to give them, in a simple way, if I tell you, the KYC documents has to be provided to the peer reviewer. Your ICA records and wherever required, the partner's details, their profile, what type of works is handling, maybe the profile firm's profile you can give. Anyway, the website of the firm or the proprietary concern would be already needs to be mentioned in the form 1. So here I said form card, partnership deed and amendment. In case they insist for that, you can show it to them. It's not that you have to, because it's more of an internal document. Then form 18. Form 18 is an ICA wherever there is any reconstruction. Again, in the previous session, one of you were asking that in case there is a partner's addition. Now, partner's addition, form 18 has to go for an updation. So that you can always download the latest one from the portal, give it to them. So that will have all the details of the firm, the branches, who's in charge, the paid chartered accountants who are there in the firm. All those details would be there from when all the, that is one document you can give it to the peer reviewer. Then branch registration. Most of the data is there, form 18. In case they need any specific details, you can always give to them, like who's in charge for the branch, what works are handled, that you can always give it to them. See, the best way you can sort out a lot of things is the moment the form 1 goes to the peer reviewer, fix up a meeting with him. Either visit his office or request him to come. Anyway, the peer reviewer has to come to the PO place. Request them for a short meeting. Meet them, tell them, run through them the form 1. Tell them about how your firm operates. Because a lot of things get sorted out then and there. Then it's a matter of picking up the samples, reviewing the documentation, discussing, things gets much faster. The moment we tell that I'll give the documents, let them come with the samples, then I'll make the data providing, then let them go, then it goes into the cycle. Then, because each of them will be practicing, then time goes, go for extension. All that can be avoided if this one simple exercise, have one short meeting, half an hour is sufficient. Be prepared, make the peer reviewer also prepared about the entire process what you follow. Of course, what common issue is outdated information is provided. You have added a branch or any partner is added or there is a change in the branch, you don't give them. If you are giving the ICA records, again there also ensure that your ICA records are updated, because some cases we have seen the records are not updated. When we see the form 1 and the ICA records, there are mismatches. Now, ideally, the only option is they have to again update the ICA records. It's a time consumption. Then missing branch office, all that I've already covered. One more aspect, in case there is any restructuring in the PU, that details has to be given. Any name change or any change of the constitution of the firm. Like for example, it was a proprietary concern, it became a partnership firm, or partnership firm became an LLP, or any of the vice versa, anything would have happened. That details has to be given, because what happens is some of the records you can download it from the ICA depending on when the restructuring will happen. Some of the documents you should keep it readily available when the restructuring happens. So those details have to get captured, because that is where you can always ensure that whichever the firm is getting covered in the peer review will be, the data is fully shared. This is again simple. What is your head office? What is the branch? Easy thing again here is just ensure where is the control. Is it a centralized control or is it decentralized control? For example, your entire review happens from your registered office. Branch office, there are members, but end of the day, the entire review process, documentation, centralized process are implemented through the head office. then branch is just only facilitating the entire review will happen, has to happen through the head office. Because why this is important, now take a scenario, you have a pan-India presence. Now, respective entities are having their own clients, they are doing their review, they are certifying all that. Then the question comes whether you might land up in having a multiple peer review happening across the pan-India, or the same peer review might have to visit. So all this has to be factored. So when you give the details, again in the form 1 has these details, whether it's a control through HO, if it's controlled through HO, how is the process uniformity across the branches? That is more important. So if you have a centralized control, you have to establish that what you do the attestation function in head office, the same process is followed. Simple example, when you have a policy that the union is generated on the same day, across all the branches it has to be followed. You can't tell that one partner or a branch has a leverage of 1 day gap, all that is not possible. If you have a quality control policy in place, it has to be across. Again, this I have already covered. So mainly ICA records will take care of this. All your partners and the constitution, if any change in the constitution, mutual partners when they are joined, all those details plus branch details, everything will be there. Either a partnership deal, generally peer reviewer will not ask. In case they want, you can always show it. It's as a better practice to say that this is how your partnership deal has been formulated. Of course, Form 18 I talked about, it has got the entire constitutional form. Even if there is a merger, demerger, any of the case, if the partners exit, partners addition, everything gets captured in Form 18, ICA record. Then, in case any partners admission retirements also gets covered there, and you can always give this data in the Form 1, apart from the records what you submit to peer review. So here what is required? Name, membership number of the partner, then the date of admission if any new partners are there during the peer review period. Then the roles and responsibility, again important because each of the partners might not do the same work. Some of them would be in the consulting, some of them would be there in the audit, some of them would be in the tax. Keep that roles very specifically because it doesn't mean that they will not sign, but end of the day the process will be common across the firm. Then who would be the presence during the peer review? This is very important because this is something even in the form it will ask who is the SPOC for the peer review. So anything has to go through them, they have to give the data, they have to organize for the data, they have to set for the meeting, they have to ensure that anything coordination needed across the head office, branches or other partners or anything on the review aspect, they would be the common person. Then signing authority details, who is signing the attestation, you can always look at it. Next, simple one, again, overall the employed chartered accountants, data has to be provided, the number who's there for that particular period. Plus, this has to just ensure that this matches with your ICA records. Because whoever is a employed chartered accountant, that data has to be updated in the ICA records when they have joined, and that details will be anywhere there part of the formatting. Just ensure that what details you give, the number of name, number, all that you give should match with your ICA records. Plus, not only ICA records, the peer review will go beyond that and also check on the human HR records, because here what happens, normally you can, even the consultant chartered accountant also you can add it, but some of the cases the consultant chartered accountant will not be added, but that will be part of your HR records. So that is one data he can always ask, saying that okay, as per the ICA record, this is your, they call it as paid chartered accountants. This is a paid chartered accountants, and apart from your HR records, there are another 10 of them or another 15. Then you need to give them data saying that how many are there employed as employees, how many are consultant is there, so that that reconciliation data has to be provided to the peer reviewer. See, why all this is required, you will come to know later, because why a peer reviewer should be bothered about how many chartered accountants I should have, what type of team composition, you will come to know little later. To some extent, it's already covered, the capacity assessments. It's in a simple way, if you have that capacity to render things. Now, take a scenario, one of you take a listed entity. Now, listed entity, all of us know the risk. You can't put an article and get the work done there. And you can't tell only the partner was completely involved in the audit, that's not going to happen. Because there are other works which as a partner has to run the firm. Now that is where the composition of team will come, the independence of the team will come, and whether they were had adequate knowledge to handle that client also get addressed here. Here, whatever the gross receipts earned for the period of the review, technically it's a 3 years period. If you're going through the first year and your firm is in existence for 3 years, normally they cover 3 years. If it's less than 3 years or it's a new entity, normally they give it for 18 months. Then again you need to go through the review. That's the first year that transition will be there. Otherwise, normally it's a 3 years period. So you need to give the gross receipt. Preferably give up the entire gross receipt from the audit and other services. The reason why is because that will give one, the completeness from the PU side. Second, when they go and cross-verify with the UDIN data, they can easily make out, okay, what is the service data, because some of that work, what you do, there is no requirement of UDIN, but you will be doing an advisory role. Always suggested, give that data. If you want to restrict to the audit, clearly mention. See, there are two options. One, you can say that audit, what is the receipt, including the head office and branches. Second, you want to give a total receipt across the attestation, non-attestation point. Perfectly it can be given. It's an option left to the PU. You can take a call where you want to only keep it to your attestation. It's allowed. Peer reviewer will not question that. But make it very specific. If you are giving an audit, the second table, other receipt, you clearly mention not applicable. And don't try to give both. Preferably give one of it, that is sufficient, because that's an option given. Assurance or total receipts. Again, the 15% I'll cover in the next slide. Because here, again, all of us know, is the PU dependent on one client or varied clients will get decided. That's the reason I said, when you give the entire assurance billing, you need to also mention any of your client has any, out of your total fees, is it more than 15%? One. Second, why is this important is this will show the concentration of the firm. Now take a scenario, you have a lot of small companies and non-corporate, and you have one big group audit you're doing. Now the entire attestation reviews will have to be focused on the group, because that is your biggest risk of your entire practice. Not that others you should ignore, but your entire quality check, independent check, team composition, team involvement, partners review, everything has to be demonstrated through the group. Again, in the group, you might tell that I have some small companies, shell companies, but at the end of the day, when you are doing your entire group audit, including consolidation, that group becomes a critical aspect of your entire peer review also. So that's one data you have to give, and the 100% that will get picked up for your peer review. Again, they will take a call whether they want to cover the entire group companies, or in the group they can pick up the sample depending on the size and the risk involved in the group. But that data has to be given. That's where your information giving in the former will become important. See, again, it gives you a group definition. It includes holding companies, subsidiaries, associate entities, and the common control, everything. That would one aspect that you need to look at. Again, foreman has an option whether you want to give it as a client code. You can always give a client code if you feel you don't want to give a client, but at the end of the day, when they pick the sample, they will come to know what is your client name. That option is there. Anyway, since the form 2 is filed, the owners will be on the peer reviewer, ensuring that the confidential at any point of time the client name doesn't go out of the peer review documentation. Again, all this keep in mind. It's year on year. If your period of peer review is 3 years, for all the 3 years you have to give data. You can't tell, I'll give it for 1 year and leave it. It has to be each year on year assessment you have to do and give the data. So that's where the preparation to peer review starts. So it's not that the moment you write a mail to the peer review asking for the PO, or it becomes mandatory, you have to sit and do. To be frank, time is not there. Now considering it's becoming mandate, probably this is the time you should start accumulating the data, what is required. Form 1 is available in the peer review website. Download it, see what all data you need to keep ready, including your policy, all that. That's where your peer review process will be much faster. They can in fact sometimes close in 3-4 days also. Any prior peer reviews done, you can give one way it's good. Any of you have already gone through the peer review? How many of you have gone through the peer review? Few of you. So you will get to know, you will know what is the requirement. But others, if you are going to go through the mandatory peer review, just ensure that the preparation is there. You have to give the details of what was the previous peer review. Most importantly, should not be there any disciplinary proceedings, anything is there. That disclosure also has to come in the format, because these are the things that will help the peer reviewer to design his review process. And anything he comes later to know, then it becomes a serious information. That's where the data transparency makes a lot of difference. Tender, any audits or any work you have got it through tender, it could be internal audit, certification or any staff audit, that has to be specifically mentioned. You have to give the details of what tender, how the tender you got it, which client, what period, what is the nature of work, those has to be disclosed. And normally that would also be picked for the peer review. Any clients you have got through the tender will get picked for the peer review, because there will be set of criteria you would have given for getting the work. Normally it could be government or PSUs where you will get it, other than your CAG or allotment on where you would have got through the tenders. That data has to be given completely. So here, simple binary declaration of whether the practice unit appointed through competitive, because again it's a competitive tender process. Then all tender must be specifically there in Annex A. You have to clearly say that this is a tender. You have specific categorization there. You have to mention which period you got it through tender. And as I told, it will get mandatorily picked for the peer review. However small it could be, even if it's a certification service, it will get covered in the peer review process. Generally it's government, sometimes large corporates or entities, they do also call for tender. It will get covered. So what is required here? Your tender documentation has to be kept. Then appointment letters from the audit committee in case it's an audit committee through tender process. Independent declaration, because most of this tender has an independence declaration. They have to give all this before you get eligible for tender approval. Then what's your quality control for the tender? Do you have any specific control, or you are following the same control but there is a proper dedicated partner in charge to take care of those tenders? That has to be ensured. This is where I was talking about, A to K, your class 22 Annex A, where you need to give the entire details of your audits done. So generally this covers your banks, listed entities, public entities, Ind-AS, any of other entities other than the covered above. It includes your private limited audits, all of it as well, where it involves an audit. It's a statutory audit, internal audit, whatever it could be there, including your tax audits gets covered here. You have to give the details of the client or the code of the client. Plus you need to give the borrowing details, what is the turnover and fees, all those details are good. The most important thing is, has to get reconciled with your UD. That's a critical part, because this is one in the annexure. Why specifically is that a lot of time the revisions have happened. I'll give a simple example. One column you remove it, or you don't disclose anything. Peer review, after all your peer review process, peer reviewer, for some reason he has submitted the same report to the peer review board. Peer review board will come back and tell that your annexure is not in the format it is given, you have to revise and give it. Then it's the same exercise, go back to the PU has to update, peer reviewer has to review it, then again submit it with the entire reports to the peer review board, then the process will start. Hopefully peer reviewer should not miss it for some reason, because they might say that one particular column is not applicable, I will not give it. Even the guidance, what it says is, if you have even not done any attestation function, clearly mention not applicable. Don't leave anything blank. There is no assumption, you can't expect the peer reviewer or the peer review board to do, because again, as Ina was insisting, peer review board does an independent review. They will come back to the peer reviewer, ask questions. If in case they are not, in fact, they will have a specific discussion with the peer reviewer, what all the methodology they have taken for samples, anything they came across, anything else they want to tell in the report. And for some reason they are not convinced, they'll again go back to the PO also. They'll write to the PO saying these are the details we wanted. So let us not get into that aspect, so make it as clear, as crystal clear as possible. So this particular thing, annexure is the crux of your entire form 1, because the sample selection and what work you have done will be captured in annexure A. So that will have a year-wise segregation. You will have to give for the period of the peer review, you will have to give the entire year-wise segregation. Then partner-wise, whatever the work you would have done, who's the respective partner, what they have done. EQCR, if of course HO branch, wherever it was done, whether it was done in the respective branches or what was done in the head office, that details you will have to give it. Then, more importantly, I think it will get covered in the subsequent slide. And as I told, explicit in nil disclosure, and all categories that 8K is mandatory. I told even one letter get missed, they'll come back. And it's a reprocess. And normally this thing you again lose another 15 days to get this all done. It might be a small correction, but the process will restart again. You can't only say that I'll send only the annexure A separately, they will not accept. They'll tell you have to again incorporate in form 1, get it signed by the PU, check for the peer review, he has to again attest, put all the reports, annexures, everything, again send back. So be cautious, invest time, it takes time. Form 1 takes time, more particularly this annexure A. Fill the details, that's where more important is you need to have a client list. You need to have a client list, what type of year-wise client list has to be there, what's the nature of service you have rendered, who's done it, who's the engagement partner, who's the signing partner, all the details you should have it. If you don't have it, better start preparing the data now. Whatever the audits you would have done, one, UDIN helps, UDIN try and download if you download it, but if you want, keep the data in this annexure A form. That will help you, annexure A to K, it will help you, one, for your internal purpose, and it helps for the peer review purpose as and when it happens. So one, I told you didn't this cross verification. In case any EQCR is being done, so it might be a risk. It's not only listed entities. In case it's any listed entities there, or any banks, or any insurance, or any of such audits you have done, and you have an EQCR, that details has to be done. Who's the EQCR partner involved for that? That has to be done. And this is only your document you are only giving, but your EQCR checklist and the queries, everything should be documented, because they will mandatorily they check. The moment this data is given, peer reviewer will pick that sample. He has to do that because of the risk involved, because all the private limited, all that, it's not required. If you have a system, good, but it's not mandatory. Now that's first part. Second part, who can be EQCR? EQCR can be any of your partners in the form also. It's need not that you need to have an outsider. If you have an outsider who is doing an EQCR, what is more important is how are you taking care of the independence and the confidential. That is very critical, because that has to be established. You can't tell I took a declaration, it is taken care. Preferably, if it's a 2-3 partners are there, make one of them as an EQCR partner, let him be aware of it, because they will call the EQCR partner also. When the peer review done, understand whether is it just a paper documentation or was he aware of the client. Because this is not just a document, it is the quality what you would be giving an assurance. Again, sample selection criteria will depend on that, and tender high risk clients are already covered. So till now it was part A, more on what you need to have in terms of the internal to the basic documentation, and what you need to have, how you need to build your samples and the data on it. The second part comes more on STO, mainly on your quality control. As again it was covered, 5 aspects, leadership responsibility. So it has to be at the top level, at the partners level only the implementation has to happen. Then only you can expect the members or the employees who are working in the firm to follow it. Second, how is your relevant ethical requirements, your code of ethics, how you are ensuring that it is taken care and adhere to. Then client acceptance, will cover one by one. Again, client acceptance is very critical here. Most important is peer reviewer will ask you documentation. The details has to be filled. How are you getting the clients? How are you evaluating the clients? It's not that some client called you, say that I want an audit service, you just submitted the proposal. It will not work like that. You can't tell it is an oral, you got a client, you have to document it. You'll have to mention from what reference it came, How have you ensured the client credibility? Have you checked the data in the social media? Have you checked the previous financial records available? Did you get if you had an opportunity to talk to the previous auditor, did you do that? All this gets covered in the client account, and it's a process which has to be documented, and there has to be a dedicated partner for capturing all these details, and there has to be a partner to approve this also. Very important, because when the peer reviewer does it, he will ask you all these documents. He say that this is what you are told, this is your process of client acceptance, I want to see the form. Either you are maintaining in a portal, you are maintaining in a tool, you are maintaining in Excel, perfectly okay, but those details has to be furnished. You can't tell that it's orally I'm doing it, there are two partners sit across and approve. Nothing will work. It has to be done, because this is one of the critical aspects to onboard client also. Then again, human resource management, a couple of times I've given reference, is the capability is there for the firm to render the service. Engagement performance standard, this includes all the review mechanism, your audit documentation, what he had covered, and how is your composition of the team, how is the partner's involvement, how is your interaction with the TCWG, how have you concluded the issues what you have identified, how have you identified the risk assessment, all of it gets covered in this aspect. Plus, most importantly, your performance management system also gets linked to this. How are you evaluating the performance of the employees based on this, or it's just like you just want to retain them so that somebody is there to do the work, or is it properly performance is driven with the quality? Then monitoring process, again all through the work, how at the partners level it has been involved, how at the qualified level or the senior level they are involved in the entire work, including your certification work. Again, it applies to all firms, even if it's a sole proprietor, no exception. This mandatorily will apply to even if you have a one employee in the firm, or if the partners are only there, it is applicable to all of them. You have to demonstrate how this has been taken care. You can't tell mine is a small firm, I don't have people, or people where they left, all that. Because as it's a past review, it's going to happen. Whoever was there at that time, they will be responsible, and ultimate responsibility with the partners or the proprietor who is in charge. See, all this more of a theoretical thing. See, one thing keep in mind, the culture of the quality has to percolate from the top. If you are very serious that even if you have a 5-member organization, you have a 10-member, you have a 2-member, you're going to grow as it goes. See, if you set the standards now and the culture is defined at the partners level, that all practically we know how the clients operate, how the data comes from the client, fees matters, everything agreed. But you have to grow in the profession. It has to be ensured that the quality gets defined at the initial stage and make it as a part of your system. No exception. See, if the exception comes from the partners level, then that becomes a practice. If you need to have a documentation, you have to convince the client, like how we were telling the first round. For certificates, they ask you for MRI. One. Second, they'll say there is a fees approval communication. Do you have an engagement letter, or do you have at least a mail communication for the certificate? If you have a point blank certificate, fees approval, they say show it us. And typical cases, sometimes what happens is you would have done only the tax audit, and for some reason you have a tally. Now if you tell all data I took from tally, they will not agree. They'll say where is the workings? Where is your data that has gone to tax audit, because tax audit is true and correct. Don't show me that you have a tally backup or I'll give an extra. They will not accept. It is very clear. In fact, if you are not able to produce the backup for the tax audit or certification, they will put a note in the preliminary comments. Even though final report, it depends if there is a serious or across the samples there are issues, it will get drawn attention in the final report. Because what happens, final report, you can't change the wordings, but you can always give a reference to the preliminary comments where you said that these are the gaps identified. Second, as Hina was mentioning, if you are only saying that going forward I am going to implement it, that is not acceptable. You have to take the comment, there is no other choice, but you have to tell that this is what they are going to, because end of the day for that particular it's not a satisfactory review. It means the conclusion is not satisfactory because there are gaps in the document. See, there are cases, not to mention, the PU has not retained the signed documents. Can you believe? Could be a certificate, financials. They are not kept a copy. Those instances we have filed. There is no choice. Only off the records you can give them some time, tell them accumulate, apply for extension, depending on what time they require, but you can't tell that it is okay. Because the whole responsibility falls on us to ensure, and same way you have to act in both ways. So if your future you're going to become a peer reviewer, you will know what is the expectation. Same way, if somebody is going to come for peer review, what is the preparedness and what is that you need to make. In the instances have happened, but end of the day, the question is, this gets documented, goes to the peer review board. What action they can take, we all know. It can be referred to one more peer review, or they might refer to peer review. So, more interest of all of in the profession, ensure that your preparation of the peer review starts and get all these documents. So, more important is, here is having your SQM or your quality control manual. Again, it's not just a document you just download from the ICA portal or the ICA website and say that this is what you have to demonstrate, because how it gets demonstrated is when they check your audit documentation. Because all that ultimately goes through your policy. So that's the first thing after your Form 1 they ask you is, give me the SQC or SQM manual. That will define everything. What is your control, how you are going to review, who is in charge for the QC, who is in charge, it has to be latest, plus how you are ensuring that if there are any exception, who is the independent partner who is going to concur to this, who is in charge for the ensuring the quality is maintained, and for anything exception happens, that partner will be responsible. And all this will get documented, including in your Form 1 it has to be mentioned, in your SQC, everywhere it has to be clearly mentioned, or SQM, that this is the process you are following, and that is what the document, first thing the peer reviewer will ask you, he'll keep that and start verifying your documentation. The moment he sees the gaps, he'll clearly tell, off the records, on the records, he'll tell, this looks your policy and your documentation is no link. So, for you people to get prepared, if you have a manual good enough, if it's an old one, get it updated. Most important, having manual is very easy. But are you following by that? Just ensure that is taken care. Don't leave any gap. One or two exceptions agreeable, but avoid that also, because it's not in the interest that a peer reviewer will come and because you don't know what repercussions will come out of it. Again, ethical requirements, a couple of things will get covered in your code of ethics session, what you're going to have in a second. But here what is more important is how can you demonstrate that there is an independence to the attestation. This is a critical, it could be your any type of, it's not only restricted to your listed entity, banks, insurance or NBFC, it's across all audits. You have to demonstrate that there is an independence is taken care. What is the documentation for that is, this is something mandatorily peer reviewer will ask you is the annual independence declaration. Normally the best practice is get it done for each of your attestation, mainly the audits, whatever the statutory audits you are doing. Or you feel it is too much, you can always have an annual independence declaration, have a policy, because again this will go into your SQC or SQM, where you will clearly tell how your annual independence or the independence declaration is taken care, who is responsible for it, and most important here is completeness of the declaration. You can't give excuses saying that this particular employee is gone on leave, this particular employee is left, because again this is during the period of the review, not in the current status. Now when you have done the audit, if that particular member, chartered accountant or anybody was there, including a partner, you can't give an excuse saying that that particular person is not working or is gone on exam leave, is not accessible. It becomes an exception. So just ensure that this is taken care. One, of course, for your peer review, and going forward, just ensure that this document is taken care, because you need to give them the data for all the years of the peer review. It's not one time. All the 3 years, if in case you're getting 3 years, you have to one give the circulation, how you have done the declaration. What is your employee strength that time? Who was responding, who was not responding? That statistical data has to be given. To that extent, it is required. And the reasons why you are not been able to give declarations. In some cases, if they were there on exam leave or they were on leave from that period only, for whatever reason, or they are not there on records, perfectly okay. But the reasoning has to be given why you are not able to take the declaration from those people. Then again, gift hospitality. Again, here it goes as your audit. It's a materiality. It's not that if they give some sweets and order, we should not accept. But what is more important here is you need to have a policy for accepting gift order, because more particularly, see, at the partners level, we are very much aware of all this. But you need to understand employees who go into the client place or interact with the client, they might not be aware. Unless and until you don't have a written document, one. Second, percolate to each of the members. They should know what they should do, what they should not do. They can't agree because end of the day, who's going to the face? We are the face. You can't tell that employee was not aware that he was a junior or that. Nobody accepts a fact. It's end of the day, we are going to face the entire regulators or whoever is going to do the review. Again, rotation policy, not only for the partners, even if in case you have any members who have been there during that particular attestation or audit, you need to have a clear rotation policy as part of SQM, how you are going to do. Of course, some of the companies, it anyway becomes mandatory, even at the partners level, which is an NBS, at the partners level, some of the MNC firms, the companies, they insist for a partners rotation sometimes, or at least at the manager level to pakka. Many of the cases, they say 3 years they have been doing, I want a rotation. So just to ensure that you have a clear-cut rotation policy defined, and it has to be implemented in spirit also. It's not just doing, because if it's a scenario that somebody in the same partner is doing for 10 years or 5 years, then you're not following the policy. Then in case any threats or in case any of them come back and say there is a independence conflict, how it is getting resolved also has to be taken care. For some reason it can come, just you have to ensure that they are not part of that work and that is very clearly documented that nowhere they are interested in that particular work and it's a separate team who's handling. Again important, has to be demonstrated, because what they do is they'll also tell you to give the list of your new clients that has got added to the peer review. Even though you give the data, then the annexure A they'll come out, make out. But they will also say that I want to have a list of your new clients which you have added to the review, because from there they'll go back and check how have you done your client evaluation. So be very, this one I know a lot of references we get through the known people, all that documented, that's all. You know what you need to do, have sort of a discussion with them, get to know about the client. Lot of data is available in the social media, you can download their balance sheet from MCA. Whatever you do, one, mandatorily it has to be part of the policy. Second, put it on records. That is more important, because you have to demonstrate. You can't tell through my friend I came to know he's a good person. See, all good in a relationship, but not in a professional relationship. So you need to put it on records, how you have evaluated the client, how you have ensured what risk can come from the client, how they can prove. All that, put it so that even for whatever relationship you would have with the client and you are rendering the service, there is a backup document. That's your entire background verification. Then, as I told, the management integrity assessment, ensuring the credit worthiness of those references, what you get. Final approval is also important. It can't be that same partner is evaluating and he's only approving. It can't be. I know constraint will be there. If you have a two partner, have that defined clearly. The partner who gets the client reference, another partner has to approve it. At the end of the day, it's among you have to discuss and do, and most of the time partners will be involved in the new clients. If you get a big client, if you have a three partner, all the three partners would be involved, one or the other, because you can only evaluate what services you can render to them without the conflict. Then document, as I said, documentation is very critical. We have covered most of it. Again, fee adequacy is also one of the factors, because it can't be that you do a high risk client and you charge very less fees. That can, not that it will get questioned, but these are the audits that gets picked up for the peer. Then the review process has to be gone through. Again, human resources, I was touched upon it. One, the ratios. Generally, the guidelines give you the ratios, how much it should be, just to give a direction in which you should have it. For example, typically one partner should have at least 4 to 6 managers, depending on the size of the organization and what attestation work you do or what audits you do. 3 to 4 staffs, and it has to be allocation based on the competency and complexity and the risk. Second, I talked about performance appraisal. Again, it has to be documented. All these details will come in your form, but I think I'll have some time. I can run you through that institute guidelines also. It gives you very clear cut what you should fill. Then training, very important. You have to establish, because you need to give, in fact, all the partners they'll ask to give the CPA records also downloaded from the IC, whether structured, unstructured. See, again, the whole aspect is how much they are involved in the practice gets defined here. How much they are involved in the work review. How much they are involved in checking the details of the work, and is it they are just signing a certificate or an audit without checking the details. All this will get demonstrated. That's where it's more important training. It's not at a partner's level. The question comes, are you even extending the training to the articles level also? See, if you look at the DCMM and AQMM, covers this aspect also. How are you training the members, including the articles? Whether they are there for 2 years or not, that doesn't make it. In the period of review, how is the training program conducted? And some of the cases, you need to give them the training calendar. So keep that, whatever trainings you are doing in-house or you are sending them to any of the institute program or any of such professional program, keep some records available. That's all. If it's an ICA program, it's very easy. If you have an in-house list, have some sort of a training calendar where you would have circulated saying this is a topic about the speaker or that, just to demonstrate saying that how are you taking care of the training. Again, don't go with whether you are a 5-member or a 10-member. Set this at the beginning. In fact, it goes up to your career advancements. Just to give a simple direction, you might have a lot of articles who have completed the CA. Now, are you retaining them? Not that the peer review is more interested in, but this is how you can demonstrate, saying that, see, I have a member working there with us for 5 years, 10 years. That means you have a continuity. Plus, you have already built a team. Plus, you have already ensured that he is in line with your quality policy. And what is advantage is you would have already started training the team who is working with them. That means you already have a robust system. Nothing that you should keep again reiterating, this is my review process. You can just say that, see, I have out of 10 people, I have 3 people who have been with us for last 5 years. That means they are taking care of the work with them. This is a team composition. That gives a lot more comfort who is doing the review. Again, this covers mainly about, again, part of your audit documentation. It will start right from your planning, how you have met the client, how you have identified the risk areas, how you are documenting that, which most of the aspect was covered in the first half. It's mainly about your audit documentation, which has to get demonstrated. Whatever samples they pick, they will check how is your planning, how you have checked what are the key areas, how is the work allocation done to the team member, how often the seniors have been there on the review in the client place, when are the partners reviewing, how are the issues identified. Everything will be reviewed. You have to sit with them, show them the workings. To that extent they'll review. Plus you have to keep the background, how it has been done, what is about the client, how they have understood about the client, they will ask. What is the business the client does, what you have identified. Of course, as we all tell, nobody will judge you on the opinion, but they only look at what is the documentation which has resulted in that opinion. Again, difference of opinion, how it is handled. Again, that in the form 1 you have to specify, in case for any audit you had a difference of opinion between the client and the partner, engagement partner. How is it getting resolved? In case any of those incidents come, is there another independent partner who was not involved, or was the client has engaged a consultant to give an opinion, or the CA firm has taken an opinion. All these details you need to be mentioned in case you have any instance. If it's not there, you can always say there was no such instances which has come across. EQC I have talked about. Supervision, again, review protocols. You have to establish how this entire review. Some of the instances they will tell that how do we know the partner has visited the client base. They can go up to that extent. In case you tell that you had a virtual call, you'll say, can you give me the virtual call details? Again, it's a old data, but they can go up to that. In case it's a listed entity or high risk client, you need to establish. You can't tell, no, 10 days of the entire engagement period I was part of it. There's a perfectly good. Can you give us some documentation for that? Means where you have gone and discussed with the client, anything was there. Physical meeting, I know it's quite tough, but if you have fixed up a meeting, you can always establish that. But they can go to that extent also. Audit planning, risk, EQC, I think I've covered. Again, how is your annual, again, when you say your SQM, it doesn't mean that you just establish in the first year and just leave it. In fact, they'll also look at your versions when all the SQM is getting updated or your quality policy is getting updated. As and when you're getting more clients or riskier clients, you have to keep revisiting and keep updating it. So they'll also look at your internal inspection program. How is it getting, where do you have a risk? Is there an independent partner does a review? Apart from EQCR, if you're involving one more partner for discussion on certain points, is that getting documented? He might not interact with the client, but that's your internal program. Then quality policy revision I talked about. Then detailed inspection documentation. As I was telling, in case any difference of opinion has come, or there is a major qualification in the audit report. Now, most of the firms, they always involve one more partner, or they take some sort of external consultancy to ensure that the approach is correct. Because once you issue the report, then you can't change anything after that. Then feedback and corrective action tracking, that will always be there. So it could be a training, or internally something has changed, or some reviews have happened, or maybe the previous peer review had happened, they had identified certain gaps. Even though they are not reported, they would have told these are the things you should take care. If you have implemented that, go and present that also. This is what were the findings of peer review, this is what we have implemented. In fact, the best way, some of the things, if they tell, if you can demonstrate during the review, nothing like that. Some few things we also have done that. Some of the points they say, can you have this policy updated? Though it will be prospective effect, we will in fact ensure that when the review is happening, we get it out done. And we will give a copy to them. We will show them, see, this is what we have already implemented. So that gives so much of a comfort to the peer reviewer. And second, it gives that satisfaction saying that you have started implementing things faster. I think AQM I will skip because most of them he has covered it in detail. Again, what is more important is your rankings will come. Keep in mind, just don't give the rankings in whatever, like if I give an example, one of the questions on timesheets. If you are not maintaining timesheet, be very specific that you don't have a policy to have a timesheet for upload. Don't try to tell I have a timesheet, we track it, we do it all that, because what happens here is, one, the peer reviewer needs the documentation to give the rating, because it's a self-rating, self-assessment, then the peer reviewer has to give the points. And then if there is any difference, the explanation has to be given by the PU. Second, there is every probability the peer review board we can come back to the peer reviewer and say that this ratings there is a variation. What is the document you have verified? The probability is there. Even if in case if they agree to the PO also, there is a probability the peer reviewer can be questioned. That's where they put lot of time to understand. Only in case you want to go for a listed entity or that, you can always opt for AQML, or you are very confident still you are not in that growth phase that you need time to implement. Perfectly okay. Tell that upfront. Again, as I told, make it very specific in the form 1. So that will be very clear, and wherever communication is required, inform the peer reviewer also, saying that as of now we don't want to do the AQMM at this point of time. But if you want to do, it has to be properly assessed. Common mistake, again, over declaration of capabilities. Avoid that, because end of the day it's not explanation. They will ask for documentation. That time again revision, because keep in mind the original version is already there with ICA. Now any modifications you try changing all that, it gets in a train, because you need to resubmit at form 1 along with the reports all that. They will review it independently and they will check in case you have given too many things and you're changing in the final versions. it can get questioned both to the peer reviewer and the PU also. Then annexure A, I told about data mismatch. Avoid that. Ensure that cross verification is there. Completeness is taken care. Then documentation, very critical on audit documentation. Ensure that again don't only stick to your samples, because for some reason the first round of samples they find too many gaps. Nothing stops them to extend the samples. Even though there is a time limit, all that, they somewhere they are not getting comfort, because what happens is in the annexures, what peer reviewer has to do, he has to specifically mention what is his first level of samples, in case has he extended it. And this particular point, peer review come back and ask the peer reviewer, was there any instances which triggered them that they should have extended the sample? Based on whatever the comments they would have given, the preliminary and the final report references or the various annexures of the peer review. Backdated, again as told you, QC manual, using now anyway, you can easily make out that also has become part of your AQM rating. All this they can check, because they can easily make out. See how you make out, it's simple. You give them a policy which is not in sync with your audit documentation. That's very clear. They know that you build a policy now and you didn't have any sort of a policy for your documentation. Just ensure that what you put in the policy, you are able to demonstrate in your documentation. Again, Form 1 is not a formality, that is your source document. Each word can be interpreted. So ensure that sufficient time is invested on that. Preferably if you have 2-3 partners, at least run it through one more partner independently, so that the data what you give to them is accurate and correct, because you can, even though you can revise, it will get captured what all changes you do subsequently. Then it's not a presentation, accuracy is very critical, reliable, that is what is more important. Then documentation, as I told, oral explanation, all they'll accept this is what the scenario all that. But end of the test, they tell that if the written documentation is not there, it's like simple. You don't have an audit documentation as well as audit is not there. Then again, no panic. It's a more of a preparation. Like since most of you are going through the peer review very shortly, prepare yourself. Read the peer review guidelines. Not that you have to read the entire thing. Not how the peer review does, but what is that you have to prepare. Mainly on the documentation. If you can go back, check all your documentation, whether as simple as it does, it has an engagement letter, is there a proper communication, is there a proper work papers, is there your MRLs, do you have the signed copies with you, or any of the discussion points, is it there? At least first stage, cover of your major clients, what you have been doing, or whichever is getting covered over the period of the peer review, or the riskier clients, what you have been doing. It can be a corporate, non-corporate, whatever it is, no exception. That would be a first preparation. That will help you to when you put it in the Form 1, because you know what is the factual ground reality. That is what you can always put in Form 1. And refer peer review board. It is one. There is a peer review guidelines. There is a manual in 2 volumes. Is there? It will give the entire thing. You can always refer what is required, which will help you to get prepared for the peer review. Of course, when you become peer reviewer, you can always go more in depth what you are supposed to, because that time the responsibility is on the PU to give you the data. But now, since most of you are going to go through the peer review, invest some time. It's very important. Then only you will be more confident and ready for going through the peer review. Even though it's a first time new entity, whatever it is, set your standards quite clear in the beginning. These are just quickly, maybe the first part I will leave it out because it's more what it's. See, this is mainly the guidelines which is coming.
It's not written.
Oh. Visible, or you want me to zoom it? See, this is again coming part of your peer review guidelines, very elaborately the institute has given both from a PU perspective and peer reviewer what he has to do. Refer it. It will give you a lot of inputs how you have to get ready for peer review, and most of the details I have taken it from here only for ease of things so that all of us will be in line with the ICA requirement. So all these general things I will skip it off. All this is already covered, but see this is how they have given, like for example you should mention the type of clients. So keep this and fill your form 1. Your 80-90% of the data is readily available, except all those leadership all water where you have to put it, but there also they give you the guidelines. See statute of listed entities. Then they say tick or strike out the applicable word, has conducted, has not conducted. See, small things but important. See email ID. Again they give you a link where you can refer the then policies. These are all generic, that's why I'm just running very fast. Form 18 I have covered, then particulars of CA. This is a part A. So again here, how is a control procedure followed by the branches? And whether any periodic sample testing of clients handled by branches is done by HO. This is your internal. See, they are not asking peer reviewers. Saying if you have a branch, are you ensuring the same uniformity is there across all the branches? Again here it defines. Becomes mandatory if answer is provided for class above by practice. You may mention order. The practice unit in its quality control has to define the control procedure. See, this is a guidance which already it's given for branches. Periodicity of checking above. Reviewer should examine, that's on the reviewer. So this part is on the reviewer. Should examine the process followed by HO. So first part gives you for PU, second part gives to the reviewer. So again gross receipts it says, or total receipts, all this it says what should be included, what should not be included. Then again that 15% I was talking about. This again, I think I had put in the slide, this is something, even though it's applicable, not applicable, do it. Because it will, one, show your self-assessment, where you stand, what you should do. This has got a lot of contents. For example, if I give, it will say how are you training the articles. To that level it is there. You give a system to the articles. How are you monitoring their work? The entire thing, how is your technology implementation to whatever extent, size or performance is there. All this comes, it will give you a rating, it will also show where you stand. This is something, if you have done, give the details, you have to give the details. Not done, you have to say not available, first always preferable do it. Because again it's an institute formulated which will give you a direction. Again tender, I have talked about. So again reviewer will see the guidelines, on what basis you got the tender. Annexure area of so this still here, so again here it gives you the what all does not include your consultancy, representation to the various authority, means non-attest functions. Then here on all your leadership, quality control outcomes. See again each of it they have defined. See what is engagement quality control reviewer? A partner, other person suitably qualified external person or team made of such individual. You can have that also. It gives you options whether you want to have an internal or an external guide. Then qualified external persons. In case of a sole proprietor form, a suitable qualified external person may be contacted for quality control reviews. Then complaints. In case any complaint comes, generally it gets addressed at the partners level or the owners level. Then threat, here all, it's more of independence, it explains what is that. Would be an undertaking certain where the work is done by the auditor subject to review as part of audit procedure. Who are required to apply for SQC or SQ and now currently. Again, whom the firm entrusted with the responsible. So they have to be a partner defined and he is responsible end to end. Generally it's managing partner or who is handling the attest function, they can be the who evaluates a client relationship, all these efforts, all is part of this. Line each class wise, subclass wise, you have defined what should be. Independence, who's in charge for that, how you need to take care of it. Is the partner same as QC partner? You can see here, there's a PU maintains a list of entities which will PU personal and others, if any, are prohibited from having financial. Again, this is a part of your independence check. How often you revisit your independence? Again, gifts, they have also defined. Here also it says, you should clearly lay down a policy for non-accepting such material significant gifts. Like if you are doing a real estate company, the owner says that I will give one of the flat. Now, is it at arm's length price is what you have to establish. Generally they will not be, but there is a probability, since you know the client, you would like to buy an apartment. The question is, can you establish it's at the arm's length price? You can see here. Performing background checks for the business, KMP sister country. This is where you onboard a client. So you need to know about the entire group, not only the isolated client. Final approval. Minimum ratio are covered. See, everything they have given a detail. It's a policy for career advancement. What is that you need to have it? Or what is it you can implement? Pre-assignment meeting. See, entire details is here. Developing background information to the client, planning document, what to see. Also ask whether you have a software or you have a manual, or is it an electronic or a manual. So you will have to explain that also, and what is the retention period. All that will get covered here. Because if you say you're keeping everything in Excel, the data should be available. And who is keeping the data? There's a probability you will tell that somebody was maintaining that person has left and you don't have access. Can't be. Password, use of password. See, these are the things you have to tell. See, however small you have, you can't tell, I have one person who takes care of my DSC password. Not possible, not accepted. Retrieval. Exactly, that's what I mean. How do you retrieve the documentation? Or confusion reads properly documented, not a documentation. In case any disagreement is there, how you need to document. There's a guidance for that. All exceptions, but policy has to take care of it. See how frequently are procedure relating to QC revised. You will have to, this is a guidance, what you need to put. See, so elaborately they are given it. So only thing you have to refer this, wherever you need to have a documentation preparation, do it, then fill the form one. Finally, your training. How is your CTE training? All that gets covered. Okay. Any questions, doubts, or too much details? Just invest time. See, first exercise, visit the peer review website. You have beautifully given the manual guidelines, everything. Don't go by the number of pages. You just need to refer the form 1 guidelines. What is required, how you need to prepare. A lot of inputs are already there. It's only thing you have to then go and assess what is available, what you need to get ready. That is more important. Then form 1 is much easier to fill because that's your source document anyway. But a lot of time preparation goes in form 1, no doubt, because even though it's 30-40 pages, initial part is easier. The next part needs time to receive because you can't tell that I will implement. But same way, if you are not implement, what is the compensatory you have also needs to be mentioned. More particularly in case you have signed any audits of them, that would be the critical part. That's it. Any doubts, clarification? Or it was too much before lunch?
When you say that data management is a core component of where things go wrong. The client data management. This is one of the core areas that could go wrong in a peer review?
See, basically, for your period of review, you need to have the list of the clients. One, the list of clients, who's a partner it got involved, what is the nature of service you have done. And that data has to be stored.
Sorry, this is about, my query is about the data that has been collected from the clients and used for the auditor assurance, and how this is being managed by the auditors.
That will come part of, you have to tell them whether you are manually keeping the records or is it through an electron. Electron mode prefer mostly two steps. One, it might be Excel and Word or the second, it could be an audit software. So you need to keep that details in a format also. How is your data management? So how are you keeping the data? One. Second, you also have to mention on the retrieval because it's a past data. So there they expect the client data is to be there and the workings what auditor would have done plus all the deliverables and the discussion box. So those would be the entire ambit of the data management. And how they will be able to retrieve and give for the samples.
Thank you.
Form 1 application, is it online or offline?
It's in the moment you get a mail from the peer review board, they'll give you both Word and Excel PDF. You'll have to fill in the Word document and sign it, send it to the peer review. As of now, it's going to become online very shortly because the dashboard is already getting created. As of now, it's a Word document. You have to fill the details and sign it and submit it. Of course, the guidelines is already.
Are you having any specimen peer review or report? So what they are asking? What they are reporting?
These guidelines, if you refer, it will give you both from a peer review perspective. It also gives you from a PO also perspective what needs to be filled. That's why I just took only the extract of the guidelines.
So you can see the PRB website. There, the what report has to be given by the peer review. Annexure 1 and Annexure 2 is there.
It will give you the entire templates of the annexure, what peer reviewer has to give, with the final report format also. Plus Annexure A, then there are a couple of Annexure peer reviewer has to give. That details you can see it also. So you know what is required to be reported for the peer reviewer also.
For EQCR, like if for a listed entity we have to maintain the EQCR, like what are the documentation or what are the things that we have to
See,
collect?
one as a part of documentation, you need to have a checklist and the issues that has been identified by EQCR and how you are concluding. Plus, how you are ensuring the appointment of EQCR within that form. So those documents, and if it's an external guy, you have to establish how the independence is taken care and the confidentiality.
Independence from the consultant, I mean
If he's
the
outside.
outside CA and the company.
Because more important, the question comes because you have an engagement confidentiality signed with the client. Now, you can't take to inform client saying that I need to share this with you, sir, because this is a mandate for the auditor. Now, when you are going to engage an outsider, you need to have a proper document of ensuring the confidentiality and independence is very critical. Because here it's a listed entity or a high risk client when you go for EQCR. And this will become part of the review. One, audit documentation, second, it's a part of the review. So just ensure that there is a proper, it's not that you just take an extract from the SSN or the issue memo and put it, that will not work. There has to be a proper review trail that the EQCR person has reviewed the data, he has given his inputs. What is the response from the audit team or whoever is engagement partner and how it has got concluded, that documentation has to be done.
So one agreement where all the three, like the company, auditor and
Company
EQCR.
will not get involved. So that's
So the
why both
confidentiality
between the auditor and the EQCR. Preferably, we always suggest have a EQCR within the firm, an independent person who knows about what he has to review, so that that part is taken care.
Okay.
So there you need not have a document, but you can always say he's a EQCR partner for this assignment. That as a part of your audit memorandum, document who is the engagement partner, who is the EQCR partner. Then for them, have a specific documentation of his review process, his checklist, that which he has to sign it. That will take care of the compliance. All good for lunch? Thank you so much. And thanks to Bangalore Banks for giving the opportunity to both of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the wonderful session, sir. I request our secretary, Preparedness, to present the voucher as program application. Ma'am. Thank you both for the wonderful session. I now will break for lunch and reassemble at 2 o'clock.